What's up, everybody? My name is Brad, and welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to the channel for the very first time. Either way, I appreciate you stopping by and hanging out while I chat about some books. And with the holiday season coming up, I sort of wanted to get into the festive mood. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and so I wanted to talk about some books that I am thankful for various different reasons that we'll get into throughout the video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about some books. First up, the first book I'm thankful for, and these are in no particular order, is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This is book number 1 in the Dark Tower series, and I think it's fair to say that the Dark Tower series is my absolute favorite series of all time. The Gunslinger is book 1. It's not even my favorite book in the series. It's actually pretty low down on the ranking of those. But without this book, obviously the rest of the series would not have happened. I love the journey. I especially love the characters, Roland, Jake, Eddie, Susanna, Oy. I think that love of the characters and caring about them and being invested in their story is what really sets this series for me above anything else. And it's not all about the journey towards the Dark Tower. It's really about the characters. But for me, and this might be a controversial opinion because I know it's sort of 50-50, it seems like. But for me, the ending to this series is the absolute best, most perfect ending to any book I've ever read of all time, and that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. A lot of people don't like the ending, but I don't think you could have ended it any other way. It was absolutely just chef's kiss, perfect ending, and the journey and the characters made the ending all the more better, I think. But if you've never read the Dark Tower series, you're thinking about taking that journey, there are some people out there that say you should skip this book, go straight into book 2, read through the rest of them, and then at the end you can come back and read this one if you want to. And absolutely do not listen to that. That's a bunch of crap. You should not listen to that. You have to read book 1, The Gunslinger. Even though it's not the best book in the series, it's not my favorite book, it is quintessential for the impactfulness of the ending of the book. Without reading this one, the ending to the series will not have anywhere near the impact that it does if you start out reading this book. So do yourself a favor. Do not do yourself a disservice by skipping this book. You must read this one in order to have the full fulfillment of what the ending of the series actually is. So I'm thankful for The Gunslinger by Stephen King for being the kickoff book in my favorite series of all time. Next book, I've talked about this before on the channel, but this is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I'm thankful for this book because this is the book that got me back into reading as an adult 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I don't know how long it was, but I remember I was watching the TV show. I didn't even know it was based on a book series. My buddy had the first book, had the TV tie-in cover with Sean Bean on the front. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So I picked it up, and it's funny that an 800-page book that is part of a 5-book series is what got me back into reading this big, huge tome. But it did. I love this book. I blew through it in probably, I don't know, a couple months, which for me at the time was super fast, considering I wasn't reading anything at all. So yeah, I'm thankful for A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin for getting me back into reading. Without this book, I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera making videos where I talk about books and having a YouTube channel dedicated to talking about books. So yeah, Game of Thrones got me back into reading as an adult. Next up is Songbirds and Stray Dogs by Megan Lucas. I'm thankful for this book for 2 different reasons. First up, Megan has become a really good friend of mine. I think it's fair to say that. Hopefully she thinks the same way. But without this book, obviously, I never would have met Megan, and we wouldn't have become friends. And then secondly, if it wasn't for this book, Paper Cuts, the live show / podcast I co-host with Jay from The World According to Jay, that show probably would not exist if it was not for this book. Before Paper Cuts was even like a thought in our heads, we wanted to interview Megan and talk about this book, and then Paper Cuts sort of came out of that. So my friendship with Jay, I don't know if I call it a friendship, more like we tolerate each other. No, I'm kidding. Jay's a good friend. Friendship with Jay, and then the opportunities we've had with Paper Cuts to talk to all kinds of different authors, all kinds of great people, indie self-pub authors, small press authors, even authors pubbed with some big fives presses. all that came from, the creation of the show, and that probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this book. So I'm thankful for Songbirds and Stray Dogs from by Megan Lucas, for my friendship with Megan, and sort of the genesis of what Paper Cuts would become. Next up, this is the Devil's Dreamland by Sarah Taintlinger. I remember I got this in a Nightworms package. It was a Thanksgiving Nightworms package, coincidentally, back in probably 2019. And at the time I got it, I was like, poetry, I don't really care. I'll set it to the side. I was more interested in the other books that came in the package. And then I remember watching a show called American Ripper. So I was already interested in H.H. Holmes, and then I watched the show American Ripper, where the premise of that is one of Holmes' descendants was sort of trying to prove that he was also Jack the Ripper, which was kind of an interesting concept. But that got me thinking about H.H. Holmes. I remembered I had this book. So I was like, it's poetry. I don't really care about poetry, but poems are short, so it's not a big time investment. I'll read a few, check it out, see if I like it, and if not, no big deal. But I ended up loving this book. This is still my favorite poetry collection I've ever read. And I'm thankful that this book sort of opened my eyes to the world of what poetry can be. It sort of erased those preconceived notions I had of poetry. I thought it was all kind of love poems and relationship and romance stuff that I don't care about. And a lot of the poems I've heard of before just sort of go over my head. I don't really understand the concepts they're trying to talk about. This one was nothing like that. It is straight up horror poetry, like it says it's about H.H. Holmes. And it, like I said, I'm thankful that it opened my eyes to other avenues of expressing sort of stories through the lens of poetry. And I've gone on and read some other incredible poetry collections since this, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for The Devil's Dreamland by Sarah Taintlinger. Next up, this is Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney. So back in also 2019, probably around October or so, I just had started my booktube channel. I think I started in August 2019, so just a couple months. And then I think I remember the host. If I'm incorrect, I apologize, but I think it was Nikki from Dark Between Pages, Jason from Jason's Weird Reads, and Regina from Regina's Haunted Library. They were hosting a readathon called the Camathon because both authors' first names were Cameron. It was Cameron Chaney with Autumn Crow, and then a couple books from Cameron Robeek. And I believe it was Nikki who reached out to me and asked if I was interested in joining and participating along with the readathon, which I was, and I did. And so I bought this book and read it. And this ended up being the first indie horror book that I ever read. And then that led to reading Cameron Robeek's books, and it was like a domino effect. This led to that, those led to others. And it was like I had gotten this key to this secret door, and I unlocked it, and there was this vast world of indie and small press horror that I did not know existed out there. So it sort of opened my eyes up to that, and also it sort of changed the direction of the channel, I think is fair to say. When I started the channel, I didn't really have a direction. I was just reading whatever I wanted to and talking about it. And this sort of steered the direction of the channel to be more horror-oriented. It's not straight up horror by any means, but horror is definitely the prominent genre that I talk about here on the channel. And I have this book to thank for that. Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney was my introduction to the world of indie horror. And then the final book for today, this is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. If you're a fan of the channel at all, you're probably getting sick and tired of me talking about this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I don't know where it would rank. I need to do a rankings video, but definitely in the top 5, probably in the top 3 for sure. But I'm thankful for this book for just absolutely blowing my mind and just completely bewildering me. Like, I didn't know that I could be so shocked by a book as I was with this book. And it's not, I don't like the word twist because that seems like something just comes in completely out of left field, but like these reveals, or there's these reveals in this book that I did not see coming whatsoever. I've read other reviews for it and people's like, oh, it was predictable. And for me, it was not predictable at all. I'm not going to say what actually goes on in the book. I think it's best to go in completely blind. But I absolutely did not see what was coming in here. And there's like 2 or 3 reveals that just blew my mind every single time. Another book, an honorable mention, is Juniper by Ross Jeffrey, has a really great reveal in that one as well. but just the masterful way that this book was written and crafted and created, and the way it all weaves and interweaves together was just, I don't know what else to say about it. It was shocking. It was bewildering. I did not know a book was able to do that to me in that kind of way. Just completely floored me, jaw dropped, blew me away. So I'm thankful for this book, The Last House on Needle Street, for just literally melting my brain while I read it. But that's it. Those are, I think, 6 books that I am thankful for. If you have any books that you're thankful for, let me know what those are down in the comments below. Also, if you've read any of these books and liked them, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments as well. Well, that's it. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If so, consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button. It'll help the channel grow. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, hope you have a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving with your friends and family. But that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.